Hi, and welcome to the Ballbuster Radio Show. I am your host, Paul, and we have Scott. Today we have, again, we got a lot of positive feedback, I think, from the masses, and we decided that we're going to talk right through this show as well. Today we're going to treat Scott as a guest, and I'm going to interview him as a non, and we're going to find out lots about how he became a non-believer of sorts.
Peek into my mind.
Mm-hmm. You got a little behind the scenes.
Wear your 3D glasses.
We're gonna get behind the scenes look into the brain of Scott. So, Scott, starting with we'll start from the beginning, I guess. How was your upbringing in terms of religion and beliefs overall? So not just religion, but anything you believed in as a child, and how did that change and stuff?
Well, overall, I had a great childhood.
That's good, that's good.
I had and I don't know if I'm remembering that incorrectly.
No suppressed memories that you're aware of?
I don't, there's no dark periods in my childhood at all.
That's actually quite surprising, because I think, even for people who have, the nuclear, upper middle class type family, everybody has their dark experience.
Well, and it's probably because I was oblivious to most of the world when I was a kid. So,
pretty ignorant.
Yeah, if ignorance was bliss, I had found nirvana, I think, as a child. But
a couple of things wrong with that, but
yeah,
it turned out.
Well, I was a kid, right?
Yeah,
and that's the thing is, were you allowed to be a kid? I certainly was. I was treated awesome by, everybody I can remember. That I just don't ever remember having any bad periods in my childhood. And again, that's a very sheltered childhood I lived.
By what means? Because sheltered could be different people mean different things. And
what I mean is, my parents are well traveled and they know a lot about the world, yeah. But where I lived, growing up in London, I was born in Etobicoke, and
it's like the
moved around. Well, I was born in Toronto, so I can say I was born in Toronto. Moved when I was extremely young. We went to Haliburton and then Barrie. My dad was teaching at the Haliburton High School.
So your dad was a teacher?
Yeah, he was the typical science slash phys ed teacher.
That's cool.
With strong emphasis on phys ed. My dad was, and this certainly played a part in my life. My dad was into extreme sports before they became cool.
So skateboarding?
Well, not skateboarding per se, but although I certainly went through that whole craze in the 70s. I had a number of skateboards myself, but no, my dad was into martial arts before that went mainstream. That was something that people would look at you funny if you said you were, studying the martial arts, studying karate or something.
Oh yeah, because the 70s was all like peace and stuff. And
well, it just wasn't. It hadn't gone commercial. The way it is today. It wasn't a business. And even when I was a kid, I took martial arts for many years, and from a very traditional guy that I think he charged $20 a month.
That's not bad.
He wasn't making money at it, but he had a small core group of students that were very well disciplined. But anyhow, so my dad was into all these sports. He was into downhill skiing. Every winter he would take off to the Rockies before the invention of the ski bunny, before it became a over-commercialized place to hang out, where people actually went to ski. So those things were kind of cool, but like I was saying, that my parents were worldly people. But where I lived in London was in the suburbs. I think we had 2 black guys in the entire school, and of course they were brothers.
Oh,
so, diversity growing up was kind of non-existent, or at least I was oblivious to it visually.
So it sounds like you had a pretty nuclear childhood then, eh?
Well, yeah, it was very sheltered in the fact that, like I said, I didn't have exposure to other people necessarily. I didn't interact every day. I didn't go to school with black kids, or I didn't know what a Hispanic was, or it was the WASP, the White Anglo-Saxon school. I did know that there was two different religions in the world.
Mm-hmm.
There was Catholics and Protestants, and that's all I knew. There was two religions in the world. And my little buddy across the street, Mikey, was a Catholic, and what that meant was that he got to go to school on a bus.
Really?
And that's the only difference I saw, growing up. Yeah, well, that's he
silly.
Was because he went to a Catholic school.
Yeah, that was out of.
That was a little further away, but I had no idea what the differences were, other than they didn't have to walk in the morning to school. That's the extent of my...
So it must have caused some jealousy in you, all the privileged kids with the buses. They didn't have to walk.
No, I actually liked it back then. This is many years ago, but I actually liked to walk to school. I didn't have... I mean, it never... Because I didn't know that there was an alternative, really. I didn't like the idea of getting on a school bus with all these older kids and stuff. And
yeah.
I had been to summer camp before, and the school bus wasn't necessarily a fun thing for me. But it's not like they got to drive the damn bus.
That would be pretty cool.
If that was the only difference, then I was happy being a Protestant.
Mm-hmm. So what did you think of being a Protestant? You just just a label to you, or did you actually partake in anything?
Well, again, because I wasn't really aware of other religions or even really familiar with other denominations, I didn't really see it as a separate thing. I just assumed when you're a little kid that everybody thinks like me or pretty damn close.
Mm-hmm.
So it was shocking to find other, as I got older and, saw that other people believed other things. It did create a lot of questions in my head. But one interesting thing, and again, my dad being very open and embracing of other cultures, and I think we've talked before, and he does that. He'll go out, and if there's a guy that's different at the table of 30 people, he'll go and he'll just sit down and just start talking to him. He's attracted to that different.
He likes to pick the brains.
He loves to travel the world. Both my mom and he love to travel. The difference is when he comes back from traveling, he always comes back with an Irish accent. It might start out as Scottish or English or Australian or Czechoslovakian or something. It always ends up after about a minute and a half of talking in this dialect. He's got an Irish accent. So
what?
Growing up, like I said, I don't think, and I don't really know what it was supposed to be like. I don't know what it feels like to be a full-blown believer, or I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. I did believe in God because I didn't know there was an alternative to not believing in God. It's just that you believe in the sun and you believe in this and that, and
so it's just
it's just a natural part of the world I was taught.
Yeah. So somebody comes up to you do you believe in God? Yeah, sure.
Well,
why?
What a stupid question.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Do I believe in God?
Yeah, it's just a thing that you do. You don't really think about it. You don't question it. You don't really even understand it.
Do you like to breathe? I mean, what a dumb question. Of course, who doesn't like to breathe? I mean, why is this even a question? So it never dawned on me that there might be people that didn't. Mm-hmm. I was still trying to get my head wrapped around the idea that perhaps not everybody's worshiping the same God, and I was still years away from thinking about playing with the idea of what if you didn't believe in any God. Mm-hmm. Again, that wasn't really an option that seemed to be on the table at the time. So, like I said, I'm not really sure what it was supposed to feel like. Mm-hmm. Not that I have Asperger's syndrome. I don't know if you know what that is.
I know what it is.
But I wasn't really one for subtlety.
Oh, okay.
If I thought that was, a terrible dinner. Mm-hmm.
You just let them know and be like,
no offense, but that was awful. And I thought that was a public service, maybe to, an important information to pass to you that was garbage.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I didn't. Thinking about other beliefs was difficult.
When did you start finding out about other things? Like,
I think you're sitting again. This is a Protestant church, and it's United Church of Canada,
mm-hmm.
which is very middle of the road, very, very liberal.
Mm-hmm.
I remember as a kid, even then, talking about ordaining, letting gays into the church. We had a woman minister when I was a kid, which was pretty progressive back then.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So when you have this idea of God, I mean, it's very fractal. It's very bits and pieces of what the parents are going to tell you at home, which was very little.
Mm-hmm.
God wasn't really a topic through the week. Sundays we went to church because that's just what you did.
Yeah.
My mom is a believer. My dad's a closet atheist who flips back and forth depending on what's going on in his life that day. He could be be Amish today. I don't know.
Is he one of those guys who just thanks God if something good happens, but ignores him any other time?
No, he doesn't even really thank God. And this is the difficulty, because we never really talked about religion growing up, my dad and I, ever, as a kid. It wasn't until I became a young adult and had my doubts and things, and he certainly wasn't helpful then either. He just didn't give a damn at the end of the day. He didn't care, and from his point of view, he saw that religion could destroy a family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, half of his family are Mormons, so he can see the destructive forces that are pretty hard to resist once religion drives a wedge into a family.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's number one rule that I have is anything that comes between family members. My default position is it's crap.
Okay.
So, and certainly untrue. No redeeming qualities from something once they've passed that line.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps that played a part in his outlook, and where he would just go along with whatever.
There are more important things to worry about.
And I mean, my dad's a very intelligent man. So the fact that he didn't have open questions, I mean, obviously he was somehow compartmentalizing or putting those down in a separate spot in his brain. He didn't ask questions or have conversations with my mom ever about religion at all.
And good for him.
I think he probably saw himself more as just a passive observer, because he wasn't.
I can relate.
Well, he wasn't oblivious to different religions and religious cultures and the clashes of those cultures. Certainly in the 70s, you're quite aware of them.
Mm-hmm.
It just never really came up. Now, my mom was there, and she would answer questions that I would have as a kid. I think the very first question I actually I actually thought was worth asking.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was probably 8 or 9, which was, Mom, what happens to all the people who don't believe in God, either because, and I wasn't thinking of atheists yet either.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking of people, excuse me, people who lived in the jungles of Africa is what I was thinking, or South America,
where God just doesn't appear to you at all. Like it doesn't even the thought doesn't occur and stuff like that.
Well, the one thing that I learned as a kid is I got to stay up later in the evening if I could express an interest in a documentary, because my dad was a documentary and science nut.
I can see the resemblance.
I would stay up and watch a show about some tribe in the jungles of Borneo,
mm-hmm.
and that was really interesting. But the next day, Sunday, where they're talking about heaven and hell, and
mm-hmm.
the importance of believing, keeping that switch turned on. It just seems strange that these people would have to go to hell because of no fault of their own.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I wasn't really thinking atheist. That wouldn't come for many years later. But I think at about 8 or 9, and that's probably a typical age. I think people were questions. You could even formulate the questions in your head. Think so abstractly. I mean, how are you going to do that at 5, 6, 7 years old?
Yeah, I remember about 8 or 9, I was starting to think rationally and start understanding things properly instead of just 1 + 1 = 2. You start having more complex thoughts around that age, so makes sense to me.
Well, this could be something that I remember actually being pretty pissed off when I found out from friends at school that there was no Santa Claus. I actually do remember that.
It is an upsetting thought.
And the thing was, and I found out with my own kids, realizing that there's no Santa doesn't really take away from the Christmas experience at all.
No.
I mean, kids they love Christmas the next year just as much as they did the year before when they did believe.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly didn't diminish any part of Christmas to me, but it was the idea that I had been made a fool of that kind of stuck with me, that somebody pulled the wool over my eyes, and that always kind of made me feel uncomfortable, that people knowingly were playing a charade, a game with me, pretending, and I didn't like people pretending. And so I think at a very young age I quickly developed appreciation for the truth. Just tell me, I don't care if it's bad, it's more important to have it accurate.
That way you can prepare for it, right?
Well, there was something that I just that never really sat well with me, being lied to. And in a kind of, not that this was intentional, but when adults took it upon themselves to say, well, it's for your own good. We're telling white lies to save your feelings or to make this a better experience for you. And I don't want that. Maybe I was strange as a kid, but that I didn't have an appreciation for that. But I could see what was going on when, the cat's out of the bag. I know there's no Santa Claus, but what happened after that was interesting with the interactions between me and my sister and my parents. About how they give me that knowing look, like, you're part of the club now, but you have to maintain the facade, the story, the lie for your little sister.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, a lot of parents struggle with this, and are you going to be truthful? Where do you, at what point? It seems harmless when you're 6, but I think most people will agree that by the time you're 17, 18, 20, you probably should have been told the truth about Santa.
Yeah, probably.
So I was part of the club now, and I was. It just didn't sit right with me. Now I have to lie to my sister and say, hey, I don't want to be a part of this. But again, this seemed a lot more significant to me as a child than I think it did to a lot of other kids. But, again, the not telling truth and how adults play these games where they have lies figured out, stories to tell kids. So now you go back to church, and I'm sitting there, and they're telling each other this, and they're all praying or following a story about something that obviously isn't true. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that I learned as a kid too, is my mom would tell me, well, some of these things that you read are stories to illustrate a bigger point. They don't have to be true. Mm-hmm. But they just want you to think.
They're just metaphors.
So now I go back to church, and I'm like, okay, how do I tell which is supposed to be true and which is supposed to be just a story, a parable, or a metaphor? Because there's nothing in, maybe if they use green text for the bullshit parts, it wasn't very helpful, and I think you can point to 33,000 denominations. I think most people would agree metaphors are not a great way to write important messages. But so getting back to going to church now, what's true and what isn't, and trying to read the faces of all the adults around me. I couldn't tell. They weren't winking at each other, so I couldn't tell if this was one of those parts. Mm-hmm. Is this a part where we just pretend?
Yeah.
So it was becoming very confusing. Again, my dad had no interest in this at all. But my mom would always give the pat answers, and because she was the group she was with, that is very very bendy, right? There's not a lot of hard lines in the church that we belong to. So she had a lot of leeway with parables, and she could basically make up anything she wanted to get past a difficult question. Now, if we fast forward a little bit, I'm in high school now.
Okay.
Up until this point, there was that part of me in the back of my head where I'm aware of religions, I'm aware of other religions, but it doesn't really seem to be playing a big part of my life. It's, again, not something that we really talked about much at home. It's something that my mom would want to do on Sundays. My dad would want to do, not because he wanted to be at church, but because he wanted to make my mom happy. Which is, fine growing up.
Yeah, sure.
There was no issues. There was sometimes my dad didn't want to go, and we didn't go. We would stay home and watch, Abbott and Costello movie or something on a Sunday morning, which to me seemed like a much more productive use of our Sunday morning. But
productive.
yeah, absolutely. I always felt better after watching an Abbott and Costello movie than I ever did walking out of church. So there's the evidence right there for you.
Yep.
Now, growing up in London, this church I was in was the largest United Church in Canada.
Ooh.
So it was a pretty impressive piece of architecture. It had, I don't know if it was the largest, but it was one of the largest organs, pipe organs.
I want a pipe organ in my house.
This pipe organ, you would need a bigger house.
Yeah, but that's what I'm implying, though.
Parts are sticking up.
I want a pipe organ, which implies that I also want a house to fit it.
Yeah.
Which means, because there's like, 2 types of buildings in the world that can hold the pipe organ, a castle or a church.
Yeah.
So if you own a pipe organ, you're going to own one of those. I want one.
The castle.
Yeah, obviously.
So the cool thing about this was when you go down for Sunday school, well, sometimes I didn't. Sometimes me and another mischievously curious companion and I would find all the secret passages or the hidden passages or the less traveled passages through this old huge church, and actually went up into the mezzanine and found where the pipe organ pipes were.
Yay.
And these,
they're huge.
Massive. So I had a lot of fun at that church. I didn't learn anything useful or applicable that I walked away with.
Same here. I remember when I went to
God, but
I remember when I went to Sunday school, the only thing I remembered about it is every single time I got free popcorn.
I got a kite once with Darth Vader on it.
Well,
that's slightly ironic.
We had warm juice and stale cookies when we were done.
Cool. So you're in your high school years, and I'm assuming more questions are being asked, and you're starting to think clearly about certain things.
Well, again, we're out of the comfort zone now. Okay? I'm in high school, which means by this point I've left the city that I grew up in. I've moved not to just another city, but another province that felt like a different country. I went from London, Ontario, the forest city, to the prairies of Saskatchewan.
Interesting.
And talk about culture shock. As a teenager, too, in high school, the formulative best years of your life. No, that was crap. No, like I said, I'm aware of other religions. Doesn't play much of a part in my life. I go to high school. I had, long story short, at the end of my first year in high school in Saskatchewan, the high school and I came to, we broke up.
Fair enough.
We came to a mutual agreement that I would not attend there the following year. Fortunately, there was a school that actually happened to be a little bit closer to my house.
Nice.
It was Catholic.
I love my Catholic school. It was one of the most I don't have a word for it, year. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, well, I was fortunate. First off, I was fortunate that the principal of this high school was a great guy, and I had heard. Now, I never heard from him. I had heard that he wasn't even Catholic, but he was a good guy. This is the mid '80s, so it means that right across Canada, laws have passed. Catholic school, high school has to admit anybody. So there was no problem with me going to the Catholic high school. There was talk about if you don't go to Mass that they had once a month that you would get a detention.
Yeah,
that never happened with me. I would drive right past, as everybody was walking, the entire school would be walking down the street to go to the local church. And I drive by in my car as I'm on my way for coffee with a couple of friends and just wave at everybody. No problem. They didn't. I never got detention for that. But what did happen was I had to, because I'm taking, as it turns out I didn't have to, but I was under the impression at the time that I had to take the religious studies class in the high school, which ironically was called the ethics class. So, which again...
It's kind of like a slap in the face.
Well, I figure this should be an easy class. Like my mentality was, okay, well, I did actually pay attention sometimes in my later years in the Sunday school, and I did have my own Bible, which I would go through, thumb through, in church when the boring sermon is going on before the kids go down, or if I had stayed in the main church and skipped Sunday school.
Do you know of any pastors or sermons or guys that speak in the front of the church? Have any of them that you know of ever been interesting?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yep.
Never had that.
I had the guy that confirmed me in the church was an interesting guy. Number one reason was he had a really cool Irish accent.
Ah, there we go.
Second thing was he was one of those guys who would say, I don't know where his theology really was. I think he himself was quite mixed up, that his followers never really figured out, but he would struggle between a caring God and a God that would stand by as helpless people. You know, the whole thing.
Not to, right?
The whole thing that we were suffering. If that's your God who stands by and doesn't help and whatever, then that's my devil. He was famous for saying, well, which seemed to hold everybody in the audience. And it wasn't until I walked away and years later I thought, yeah, he didn't address this at all. He really doesn't. There's a lot of theobabble going on, but he hasn't said a damn thing. But as far as interesting guys, yes, he was. He would at least get you to think. He was preaching, but he wasn't necessarily telling you what to think. Okay, fast forward to the Catholics class now, where I had never gotten the feeling from my parents that you shouldn't ask questions. That stop asking us. You know, that curiosity bad. Stop trying to learn.
Nor should.
So I never really felt as the mischievous, impish little bugger I was as a child. I didn't really feel that my curiosity was being pushed down. So when I was in the ethics classes, and the very first day I put my hand up. We're going through Genesis, and I'm like, okay, there's a reference here to the land of Nod. That's where Adam and Eve's two male children went to get wives. Okay, I'm missing parts here in the Bible. My Bible's missing pages because we went from Adam and Eve being the only two people on the planet, procreated and had two sons, to where the hell did the village come from? Right? So right away, and this was blatantly obvious, how come I can't be the first one? Right away I got the impression that we really don't appreciate questions in this class.
Yeah.
So I struggled through that, but I wanted to get a mark in this because I felt that I knew at least as much about this as anybody else in this class, including the teacher. I didn't think just the way he responded to the questions being asked, I think I thought it was becoming quite clear that he hadn't a clue what he was talking about. One of those teachers that if
the curriculum,
if the question isn't even asked exactly the way it is in the teacher's edition book, they don't know how to answer it. Right? This guy could not think for himself.
I hated
and again, that became very clear, and the way he handled the questioning was very poorly done. come to the final exam,
Mm-hmm.
one question, one essay question on the exam. Why, in your opinion, is the Catholic tradition the only path to God? So, of course, by this time I had studied some other world religions, mostly on my own,
Mm-hmm.
at home, in my free time. Now, this is Saskatchewan, no internet, I had nothing else to do. So, reading up on these other religions, I quickly came to the conclusion that there's nothing special or that puts any of these religions head and shoulders above the rest as far as usefulness.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote like 3-page essay answer of why other religions have meaningful, things in their text that you could find meaning from, could apply it to your own life just as much as anyhow. I wrote 3 pages of answering this question. Why I thought the question itself was worded
Incorrectly, or
now, I didn't know anything about logical fallacies, but that's what I was doing at the time. I identified that the question was asked incorrectly, or it was a kind of a nonsensical question in the first place. It was begging the question.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a 0 on it.
Oh.
But restoring my faith, as much as I'd ever have faith in anything, restored my confidence in mankind. I took it in and showed the question and my answer to the principal and stood back. He said, no, very good, pass.
Nice.
He overrode the teacher and he said, no,
I wish I'd done that.
I said, the only way that you could mark, the way it's worded in your opinion, the only way that he could mark that anything other than perfect, he would have to actually demonstrate that actually was not my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It was a well-formulated answer. So yeah, he gave me full marks for that. So I think that was a nice lesson that when you meet resistance of stupidity in front of you, appeal.
Mm-hmm.
Go find somebody else. If you're not happy with that answer, go to the next level of authority.
That actually raises a question, because I was thinking about it, and if that question was asked in any religion class, especially in the grade 10 or grade 11 religion class these days, where you learn about other world religions, if you ask that, especially like in those classes, because I found that in my class, my specific class, learning about all these other religions, everybody that was religion or understood religion or cared about being religious would jump religions during that class because they learned about these, like Hinduism, like, oh, that's a cool religion, I'm going to be a Hindu now. So you ask that.
Well, there's a new option, and there's some attractive things in this one. So I studied Hinduism.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at a few other things, including looking at Native, American spiritual teachings.
Or as they call it today in class, animalism.
Yeah,
Animism.
Animism.
Shamanism.
So that was kind of neat because I do have some lineage. My dad's half Native. So, but one of the things that I found fascinating, I was reading, again, I didn't at this point believe in any supernatural stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but the grave concern during the conversation I had to have with my parents when my mom was cleaning in my room,
Mm-hmm.
the first and last time she ever opened up my drawer,
Mm-hmm.
went past the condoms and the penthouse and found the Satanic Bible.
Ooh.
So that was an interesting conversation, trying to explain. No,
I'm studying it.
I'm reading it, but not that
Reading
way.
it.
I'm reading it to just. I'm curious. What's so wrong?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was my introduction to world religions and
I remember
fascination with it. So
I remember I had a similar experience, except it was my religion teacher found out I was learning about Satanism because the project was on understanding religious conflict, and my thing was the idea that not just Catholicism or any other religion, but everybody in the world is being affected by it, and and all religions are being affected by it, and I did my project on and used Satanism as an example as to religions that are misunderstood and labeled and therefore shunned. So I took it and I presented it, but because the fact that I even acknowledged Satanism's existence, I got docked like 20 marks. I went
Because
from
they didn't like the topic.
So it's anyways, the question I was originally going to ask, what are your thoughts on the people's upbringing and teachings of other religions or religion in pure at all as compared to your time in today's
Oh,
generation?
I think that that's a class that you need to have in school. We need religion in school, right? But not taught as fact.
Taught us.
Taught from
A myth class.
Yeah.
Yeah, world mythology, world religion is world mythology. The different studying the myths of other cultures, studying, realizing that today those myths have been organized into organizations today that we call world religions. But again, sort of like what we do with the Muslim world. Learning about those things, and once you have a friend that's a Wiccan, you realize, oh well, she's not a witch like a Hollywood witch or religious witch. She probably shouldn't be killed just because she's calling herself a witch. I don't care what the Bible says.
You should probably just ask her why and what do you mean.
So the interesting thing is, we did have a group of Muslims, not a group, a couple of Muslims, a family of Muslims living across the street. So I was always confused and curious, but never really wanted to ask questions about this other religion because it looked kind of strange and odd.
And foreign.
I remember the time when I was probably 7 at the most, and I was over at these people's house. It was a young couple, and his parents lived with him. They're from Lebanon.
Ooh.
These people were like 80 going on 200.
Oh wow.
They were ancient, dusty people. So, and I can't remember the name, Situ or Siti, I can't remember. We used to actually call them Grandma and Grandpa in Arabic. Mahaba. I learned Arabic words, hello, goodbye, and that sort of thing. And I remember them coming over and giving me colored eggs on Easter because they did believe that Jesus was real, but they just didn't believe that he died on the cross and all the stuff that my parents did, or at least my mom did. So I always thought that was interesting. Oh, well, they acknowledge our religious beliefs, and maybe this is kind of cool. So that was my brief intro to Islam, or at least Muslims. I'm certainly not Islam yet, and I remember the guy, the man, who had a nephew who went to my school, and he had heard that I was being friendly to this Muslim kid. Nazim was his name. Nadim. I remember that back in grade 2. This Nadim kid, who was, I think he was probably 16, but he had just come from, I mean, he wasn't 16, but he seemed older than the kids, bigger than the kids, because he had just come from Lebanon or wherever he was from. And he didn't understand the language and all that stuff, so he's learning. So it was such a huge deal that these people made that I was actually being friendly to him at school when other kids were shunning him or picking on him. Which seemed like such a freaky situation to me as a kid. I've always stood out there. Why would these people make a big deal that I'd be somebody's friend? Well, it was a big deal because other people wouldn't be his friend.
Yeah.
And again, this goes back to being sheltered in this, very white, we had hit our maximum of 2 black guys in the school.
Oh yeah.
That was our quota, it seemed. So it was strange growing up.
It's a very
but
good
see,
example.
you're always you're in that first stage of atheism where you're asking questions, where this isn't obviously everything I've been told about my religion can't be true. Okay, and I think a lot of believers are in that position. And I call them pew warmers. A guy like my dad who would just a pew warmer.
Okay.
A guy who just is warming a pew every Sunday. He's not there because he's religious. He's just there because he just doesn't know what the hell else to do on a Sunday morning. He has so many questions. He doesn't even want to start to ask the first one because the questions will start coming. So complacency, security, calm, just go along with the crowd, right? Then you get to that second level where, okay, obviously this stuff isn't true. but we'll play along maybe, or at the very least, we'll just let other people have their beliefs and we'll ignore it. And we'll just pat them on the head. No, that's interesting.
And that's where most atheists seem to
And
be.
a lot of atheists are there. And then, because I was there, by the time I was 12, 13, I mean, clearly this stuff isn't true.
Okay.
And I don't know if I'm supposed to play along. I just felt obliged to kind of play along, sort of the Santa thing all over again. Right?
Mhm.
I don't know who and who isn't in on the joke, so the safe thing is to just play along with the joke, so you don't let anything out of the bag.
Yeah.
But, and actually, when I was about 18, 19, 20, I started to have second thoughts. Well, maybe I've just not studied this right. This is religion for the stupid masses, but maybe some of us can study and become scholarly a level above this, right?
Mhm.
So you start to study that, and you realize.
No, it's just, yeah.
No. The questions might become more sophisticated. The answers don't.
Yeah.
So, what happened was I thought to myself, I think I was about 19 or 20, and I'm really going to give this kind of an intellectual, the old college try. I really give this some thought, and I had just gotten the internet, so I had found this website that I spent a lot of time on. But when I first went there, I was kind of a I was mostly atheist, but I was kind of still with one hand left. I had a grip on the old beliefs.
Yeah, just in case.
And I'm like,
Keep it
okay,
there.
I'm either going to put my other hand back up and grab back on with both hands, or I'm just going to let go.
Mhm.
I was getting really tired of having my ass handed to me by atheists. Right? I would go on and have discussions, and very nice people would answer my questions that I had, but it became very obvious that these guys had my number.
Mhm.
There were any arguments I could put forth for the God that I wanted was answered in a way that I just couldn't ignore anymore. So
Which kind of blows my mind that, how long ago was this? Like 20 years ago, right?
yeah, 25 years ago now.
And people seem to spend a lot of time, already had all these answers 20 years ago, and we still haven't, like, all agreed, okay, yeah, these guys are right. Way back when people already just knew there's no possible way that these guys are right, and to this day, people are still holding on, like...
Well, so I'm studying that. I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. And that's when I started, through, being hooked up to the internet,
Mm-hmm.
that's when I started going from that second stage to the third.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas going from, oh, what's the harm? I don't believe it, but what's the harm? To the third stage when you go, oh, that's the harm.
Mm-hmm.
Holy crap. I didn't realize the damage that religion was doing to the species.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't getting any better. And still isn't.
No.
So that's when I went, okay, I'm an atheist, but I've reached that third stage where I don't think I should be quiet about this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I did have people that, oh, he's just going through a stage, or if I had one person say this to me, I had 10 people tell me in my lifetime, or refer to me as eccentric.
Mm-hmm.
I might be strange for other reasons, but my atheism isn't what makes me eccentric.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really cool that, like we've heard from so many other atheists, that the internet gave me something that I didn't really have close at hand. I didn't have a family member who was an open atheist.
So what you're saying is the internet is the devil.
Yeah. One finally a devil worthy of worship. Yes,
Exactly.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, certainly from a religious point of view, the internet is the printing press on steroids that is taking the control out of the hands of clergy and putting information into the real tangible facts and information.
Especially
available to
since
anybody.
now that I think about it, I'll go on the internet once every 3 months, and I'll just talk to I'll go on a chat forum and just talk to trolls, and it seems that every single person that spends more than, let's say, 40 hours a week on the internet is guaranteed to be an atheist, which is interesting.
It's our generation.
Well, so now I'm in the third stage, and it's funny because even today I have people saying, well, geez, you sure talk a lot about God for somebody who's an atheist. I'm like, you realize that I'm trying to be an activist here, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you understand what an activist is, but you just wish I would do it quietly? What the hell are you talking about?
Exactly.
I'm in your face because I'm an activist, because I see the harm, and I want you to see the harm too, right? When I mean, as the boys were growing up, I saw things like humanitarian mission scams from local Pentecostal churches here, where the lying starts at home. We're going to fill the heads of our friends and family with a lie of why we're going on a mission, all right? You can't tell me that there's no person on the other side of the ocean that knows how to mix cement.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're telling your friends and family that you're going to Uzbekistan or somewhere because you're going to make a basketball court, how stupid do I look?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's not why you're going. You're going, that's your cover for going. If you be honest about it, now the reason why they can't be honest about it is because trying to coerce people into joining your religion is illegal in a lot of countries.
Which is shocking because when I think missionary, a lot of negative connotations come to head, and I'm pretty sure a lot of religious people have that same thing, have that same kind of idea about missionaries.
So I quickly saw through the scams and the bullshit and saw it for what it was. That coupled with what I saw, now I had argued and won the argument. Neither of my boys are baptized, but in kind of, I won that one, so to give back a little, I didn't really see a problem with the boys going to something like a day camp, right?
Because camp's usually a good thing.
Well, it was, Andrew got out, no problem. He loved that pool, but by the third day, and he had no problem going through the morning religious crap, the Sunday school crap, because they had a really cool pool. It was on day 3 that he came home and said, I'm done, I'm never going back to that place again. Why not? What happened? They told me that dinosaurs and men lived at the same time. So
He's a paleontologist.
Andrew was...
Which is funny because he's really...
Andrew knew more about dinosaurs by the time he was 5 than the average adult knew. And it would be funny because he would correct my buddies. Oh, Uncle Tilden is not a... It's not a diplodocus, it's a diplodocus. Like, he would correct everybody's pronunciation if you said a name wrong.
It's funny because he's so into this Jurassic Park game on his phone.
Oh, he's been into Jurassic Park forever. So that was a very... He broke up with the church that day. And he never looked back. He said, they're idiots, I'm out of here.
Good for him.
Younger son, not so much. Some residual... damage from the indoctrination regarding hellfire, things that no adult had any right. And yeah, there's actually a group called, there's a Canadian group that specifically targets kids. They evangelize and indoctrinate children, and they do it through these churches, these church camps.
Yeah.
So I think this might be something that I would love to see CFI and other people maybe next year at the beginning, just before the beginning of summer camp, have a little campaign. Parents, why don't you make sure that you know what's being taught at this church camp that you
get them to sign papers and stuff.
If you're okay with the same crap that that hellfire and you're going to be damned unless you love Jesus back. That's something that you would be used to if you were a child in a Pentecostal church. You're getting indoctrinated with that shit every day. But for unsuspecting parents to think, oh, this is a great way to get the kids out of the house. Yeah, it's camp. They don't even care if you have money. They'll take your kid anyhow. Yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
They want your kid. They want to indoctrinate. They want to turn him into a mindless soldier for Christ at an early age.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe in the spring next year, I'll see if, I think that would be a worthy campaign. But
Yeah.
long story short, I'm deeply embedded. I'm deep into
And now you have a radio show to even strengthen that.
Yeah, except nobody seems to disagree with anything I say.
I know.
Or at least have the balls to say it. So, yeah. So that's where I am now. Is go to places, conferences like Imagine No Religion, trying to organize my own conferences in the next couple of years, starting hopefully in a few months in Ontario. Yeah, that's being an activist now is what it's all about for me. Is speaking out. Not being embarrassed, not being afraid to say you're an atheist.
Mm-hmm. So we have 2 minutes left. What kind of words would you say to inspire somebody to jump from that second stage to the third stage to becoming an activist? What would be a really good way to kind of unlock any doubts that they would have to becoming a doubt?
Read the papers, read the news, inform yourself.
So stuff I don't do.
Don't just, and not only that, don't just read the news that people want you to read, right? What do we have at home? If I have CNN on, in the next 20 minutes I'm going to switch over to Al Jazeera or Russia TV or several that I can't even pronounce. I-24, which is the Israeli news channel. I get my news from all kinds of sources on the same story to see the different spins, which is unbelievable considering the Gaza Strip right now. What's going on? You probably don't. No. Yeah. So there's crap going on right now. Israel is going to probably do a land invasion of the Gaza Strip right now to try to get Hamas to stop shooting rockets at them.
That'd be a good idea.
But the global spin is, isn't this terrible? Israel's invading Palestinians. No, if Hamas would stop shooting freaking rockets at Israel and hiding behind Palestinian civilians, which is really what it's going to have to take to end the Middle East, is the Palestinian civilians to have enough of Hamas and say, you obviously don't give a shit about us. You're using us as human shields. Things like that. Read the paper. Read the paper. Follow the evidence.
All right. So there you go. There's some inspiring words, and definitely something I'm going to go look up, hopefully, if I'm not too busy. We're going to close up our show tonight with my favorite band, the Chili Peppers, Shall It Be Thy Game, and this is dedicated to all those in the second stage of atheism.